I bought this G80 M3 for $97,000. Yet after 2 years and over 7,000 miles later, a website like KBB says that this is what they still go for on a trade-in or even on a private sale. And it's not just my car, just look online what these things are selling for used. It's pretty much what they sell for new. These cars are a bit of an anomaly because they're just holding their value. Yeah, they're depreciating a little bit. Now, most new cars, they drop down like a rock. However, the G80 M3, as you guys see, that is just not the case. So it got me thinking, what about the G80 M3 and the G82 M4s, but mainly the M3s, let's be honest, has these things holding so much value? Because that's just not the norm. And this isn't a Porsche or a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, it's just a BMW. These are mass-produced cars. So what is it? So I have some ideas as to why. So that's exactly what we're gonna be talking about today. So let's just start with the obvious. This is an amazing car. Subjectively, objectively, however you wanna put it, the G80 M3 is an absolutely amazing car in so many ways. Yeah, it's not a cheap car, but you guys tell me what other car for 100 grand can give you everything that the G80 M3 does? There's not many, if any at all. First of all, this car looks absolutely amazing. I know when it first came out, everyone hated on it, especially the quote-unquote beaver grills, but with some modifications and just a little bit of time, everyone turned around. And then unlike previous BMWs, this thing is super nice on the interior. It's luxurious, it's sporty. They released things like these carbon bucket seats, which was a first for BMW. Like, this interior feels like you're in something special, something expensive. Now look, I know that it's very common to a lot of people, but you have to remember, the internet is not real life. Even if you see these cars all over the internet, they are not that common in person, and anytime I drive and people see this thing, they turn their head to look at it. And yeah, obviously it's not a manual Mercy, a V12 Lamborghini that's produced in the tens or hundreds. This thing was definitely still mass produced, but even with that, there's a lot of uniqueness to all the G80 M3s, especially with BMW individual colors. You can have this car in pretty much any color you can imagine. Obviously went with black, but that's just a personal preference, but people go for some crazy colors, from oranges to reds to purples to pinks to yellows, absolutely everything. So these cars, even if they're common, you can still have a very unique version of that. And not just with the exterior, you can also do the same with the interior. So obviously you guys saw, I have the ivory interior, but you can get these cars with red, orange, and even blue if you really wanted to. So combining all those different interior options with all the different colors you can get on the exterior, you can make for some really cool specs of the G80 M3. Like, there's so many cool combinations. So despite this car being common, they can still be very unique. Okay, but I know what you're thinking. What does that actually do to the value of the vehicle? Well, because there's so many unique specs and options you can get, some of those specs and those options can really lead to value and desirability just overall in the car, but even on the used market. If you guys look at a car that has like an individual orange or something like that, or like a Laguna Seca blue G80 M3, those cars, because they're more unique, they drive up the value. And now this is probably a good time to clarify, which if it wasn't obvious already, I'll just make it clear. Desirability has a direct impact onto value. So all the stuff that I'm talking about, I might say is more desirable, that then in turn means that it's more valuable. So just keep that in mind. It's almost like a 1-for-1, but if that wasn't clear, now hopefully it is. Anyways, the next thing is, this G80 M3 was the first and also the last of its kind in a lot of ways. For example, the G80 M3 is arguably the last M3 you'll be able to get with a manual. Now, mine is an automatic because it is an xDrive, which we'll get into in a bit here. But these cars, you can spec them out with a manual transmission, which, if you think about it, not even just with BMWs and M3s, what other sports sedan can you still get in a manual? Again, leading to the desirability and then the value of these cars. The next thing is this little badge right over here, xDrive. This was the first ever M3 to offer xDrive, so that opened up the doors for a lot of people. Being able to drive this car in winter on some proper tires, not summer tires, and being able to just enjoy it year-round is a huge thing. And even for the people who don't care about it for the practicality aspect, well, there's performance advantages too, which that's another big thing. Although the G80 M3 wasn't the first BMW to introduce it, I actually think it was technically the X3M. This car does come equipped with the S58 engine. So from factory, this thing comes with so much power, and if you really want to, you can tune it and push out even more with simple bolt-on mods. It is so tunable. Combined with the xDrive system, this thing is an absolute rocket. Personally not my style, but there are a lot of people out there who literally drag race these cars. The other thing is, guys, this engine is super reliable. Unlike every M3 that came before it that had a well-known common issue, this S58 has nothing like that. And if you guys didn't know, reliability does drive the value of cars, because no one wants to buy a used car that they know is gonna break down. You'll see that happen a lot on the used market. But if the car is reliable, like the G80 M3, it holds its value, because, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I'd personally pay more. That did not sound good. Because people are willing to pay more for a more reliable car because it's less cost down the line. So, just another reason why these cars are holding their value. Now, this next one is a little depressing for me to talk about, but this might be the last non-hybrid, non-electric M car, especially the M3 that BMW produces. We all saw what BMW did with the M5, and don't get me wrong, that's a really cool car, but it's a hybrid. And if that's any indication, and I actually think BMW already confirmed it, the next M3 is gonna be either electric or a hybrid. And you guys tell me, which one would you rather have? So, enough said. So if you guys notice, there's a trend here. Everything that I'm talking about is kind of an indication why this is a great sports car. And there's a reason for that. That's because sports cars and more enthusiast-focused cars are the cars that hold their value. Now, this isn't gonna be specific to the G80 M3, just any car in general. There's a reason why something like a BMW 7 Series drops like a freaking rock when it comes to depreciation, and something like an M3 doesn't. Even an older M3, like an E92 or an F80, they still hold their value for the most part, whereas you can get the same year 5 Series, base model 5 Series, or 7 Series for so much less. That's because people who buy these enthusiast cars, they don't care about the most modern, they care about specific things, like we talked about, manuals, like certain specs, like performance, reliability, and things like that. Whereas people who buy those other cars, those more like luxurious cars, well, those people, they just want the latest and greatest. They don't care that a certain year wasn't a hybrid or a certain year you can get a manual. They just want the newest thing. So the older thing loses value. Whereas an enthusiast, well, they don't care what year this car is. They care about the things that they genuinely care about. So a big reason why the G80 M3 is holding its value so much is because it is an enthusiast car. Even the M5 leans, although too enthusiast, it still leans to some people who want more of like a luxury car, maybe just with a bit of performance. But regardless, the M3, it holds its value, and the G80 M3 being one of the last of its kind is just another big driving factor as to why this car is holding its value. Now, for those of you who are watching and know these cars well, you'll recognize there's something that I left out of this list. And I left it out intentionally because I don't think it's permanent to these cars. I think everything else will stand the test of time and it will always apply to why these cars will hold value. But the next thing, it's just a point in time thing. You guys will understand what I'm talking about. And that is internet hype. This car has so much internet hype. And look, I understand I'm not really helping its case by just glazing this car. I think that's what the kids say these days. But the point is, it feels like every other TikToker goes out and buys a G80 M3 because it is the car to have these days. And because every influencer and everybody buys these cars, obviously people get influenced. They want these cars and it drives up the value of them. Again, I don't think that's a permanent thing. I think it's something that's gonna eventually fade and people will move on to the next hype car. However, everything else that I mentioned will still stay. There will still be a whole bunch of cool specs on this car. This car will still be reliable. It'll still be a performance beast. It'll still be xDrive. It'll still come in a manual, and all those things will drive an enthusiast perspective on this car and thus driving up the price. So look, I'm gonna end the video by saying this. Obviously, this car will lose value. It's not gonna go up in value. It's not going to never depreciate. That's not what I mean. I just mean compared to other cars, this one has been an anomaly and it's been holding its value amazingly. Now, how do I feel about that personally? Well, it's nice because if I do decide to sell this car, I won't lose that much money on it, even though I bought it brand new, but that'll only come to fruition if I ever decide to sell this car, which I don't know if I will. So look, I'm not saying that there's a certain way to feel about it. All I'm saying is these are the things that I've noticed that tend to drive up the value of these cars. Will it always be that way? Like I said, maybe not, but there will be things that don't change. So I'm sure this car in the future, and I've said it in a video years ago, this car will be great at holding its value. It's not gonna be some classic. It's not gonna be a car that's worth over 100 grand one day or $1 million or something absurd, but compared to others, I mean, you can buy this thing and drive it around and not lose too much money on it, unlike most other cars. So anyways, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop it a like, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.